Hello, welcome to History 1302. This is U.S. history since 1877. My name is Alfonso R. Lopez, and I'll be your instructor for this course this summer term. Now, what we're going to be doing in this video presentation is to go over the syllabus, since the syllabus pretty much explains everything that you need to know in order to identify the major components and features of this course regarding, for example, textbooks, course assignments, exams, extra credit work, for instance, grading, also the method of instruction, how the class is going to be taught, the information be presented, the responsibilities of the student on a day-to-day, quote-unquote, basis. And so everything you need to know about this course, how it's going to be formatted and organized and structured and the like, will be explained here. And of course, this video presentation is also going to show students, the new interface of Blackboard Ultra and how to navigate it in terms of this course, meaning where to identify the major sections, where the instructional materials are located, the course assignments, where to submit the work, and the like. All of that is going to be presented here. So this is a very important video presentation. I highly recommend, I think it's really critical that you watch this video from beginning to end. If possible, take notes, because most of the questions that students ask during the semester or during the term, the summer, regarding this course can be answered by just looking at the video and reviewing it. Of course, if there are some material that I don't cover here that might arise, later on during the term, of course you can address those questions to me, and I will be providing guidance and orientation again to all of those questions and concerns. All right, so let us turn now our attention to the main page in Blackboard. Again, it's 1302. You click on it, and so far I've sent one announcement. As you can see, whenever there's a new course announcement, it will notify you. This morning I sent out an email announcement. It was posted on Blackboard regarding this video presentation that will be uploaded on Monday, July the 7th. So once it's uploaded, I will send you an email notification. Again, that is already there for you to review and so on. Okay, so now this is the new interface of Blackboard Ultra. Is of course different from the previous format. This summer, ACC starts with this new interface, and all instructors right now that are teaching this summer are beginning this new edition of Blackboard. It's called Ultra. Okay, there are significant differences, but I think very noticeable is that instead of having on the left part of the page a series of links, that was the menu column of the old Blackboard, and all the major links of the course were listed there. Now, as you can see, they're located in a bar on the top, and there's only about 8 or 9 options where to choose from, and everything that really relates to the course falls under one of those categories. The most important one of that menu column on the very top of the page is the content section. The content section pretty much contains everything that you need to be concerned with in this course, in terms of the syllabus, this video presentation, for instance, the instructional materials. I will explain that. in just a few moments, and now how the instruction is going to be delivered and so on. The course assignments, there's going to be a folder there as well. And at the very end, you're going to find, of course, as well, a section or a folder that says submit work. And all of the work that you must submit once completed must be submitted here in this section, submit work. I will explain each one of those links as we're going over the syllabus, of course, explaining what the course is about and how we're going to structure it. We're going to be talking about also about exams, how the exams are going to be formatted and delivered and so on. All of that will be explained here. Okay, so this is like the first day of class when you meet the instructor, let's say in a face-to-face format, and the instructor pretty much explains everything you need to know in order to not only learn how to navigate the course, but also the major expectations and how to prepare for the exams and excel in this course. Okay. All right. So once this video is edited and finalized, etc., it's going to be uploaded here in this upper section. It's not yet visible to the students because, again, the video has not yet been edited and finished. So this is the major link at the very top that kind of welcomes the students. It's a class introduction. And once again, I highly recommend that you review this as thoroughly as possible. Okay, just below the class introduction video presentation, you find the syllabus. You click on the syllabus, and this is what we're going to review. The syllabus, you can either click on the link and read it outright, pretty much everything is there, or you can choose to download the document. It's a Word doc. You can download it and save it in your laptop or computer, again, to keep it handy, if you will. Okay, so let us go over this document. It's a very important document, and let's start from the very top. So this is History 1302, section 092, and this is the second part of U.S. history. The two surveys that are required across colleges and universities, again, is History 1302, U.S. history since 1877. Okay, this is the second 5-week summer session, which starts Monday, July the 7th and ends on August the 10th. Once again, my name is Alfonso R. Lopez. I'll be your instructor for this summer class. And the fastest and easiest way to reach me is via email. Okay, my email is listed there in the syllabus. And, you know, although you can indeed send messages through Blackboard, there's an option, as you see there in the list on the top. It is really easier and faster for me to be notified and to respond immediately to messages, etc., being sent to me if they're sent through the email system, okay, rather than Blackboard messages. Now, I'm checking my email several times a day, and so whenever a student sends me an email, I spot it right away and I respond. You know, my policy is that Monday through Friday, I will be responding within a 24-hour period to all emails, and during the weekends, I wait until Monday. You know, if you send it any day in the weekend, I wait until Monday morning to respond. Okay, that's my policy. Now, as far as ACC policy goes, it is stated again very clearly that all communication between faculty and students must take place within the ACC supplied electronic system. So if you send me, for example, an email through your private email account, I'm not going to reply to that message. So if you want a quick answer to a question regarding grading, the exam, the report, we're going to talk about all that. please use your email account, because that's just going to be much easier for me to receive both notifications and be able to reply again instantaneously. Okay, so there's going to be one required textbook for this course, although this is not really a textbook per se, it's a text. Let me show it. So this is the textbook right here. It's called Reading American Horizons, Primary Sources for U.S. History in a Global Context, and is the 4th edition. Make sure you're getting the 4th edition. If you have problems locating it for some reason, use the ISBN number that is provided there in bold letters, and that will take you to the exact text that we're using for this course. And as you can see, this is not really the standard conventional textbook that is often assigned to history courses, where you read a narrative of historical events from cover to cover, but it is instead a collection of historical documents. That's what a primary source is. It's a historical document. It can be a letter, a memoir, it can be a piece of legislation, it can be, in some instances, the writing, excerpts, again, of writings produced by statesmen, presidents, or etc., missionaries, adventurers, pioneers, etc. Again, historical figures that actually left a record, and instead of a historian reading that record and interpreting it for us, the record is presented without any filter, so you can actually hear the voice directly, the thoughts, the views of the people that actually made history in the past. And the reason why you're supposed to get this book is to complete the assignment that is due at the end of the term. There's a major assignment, we're going to talk about that. But to complete that assignment, you need this textbook, because there's a series of documents that you're supposed to read and then answer some questions on that. And that comes from this book. Now, this book, as far as I'm concerned, is sold at the ACC bookstore. Okay, the ACC bookstore at Highland. The Highland campus bookstore is the one that has copies. That's as far as I'm told. And for sure, you'll be able to locate that book there. I highly recommend not waiting until the end, because the ACC bookstores have a policy of returning unsold copies at midpoint of the semester. They assume that students that did not buy the textbook at that point, that they maybe either don't need the book or they got it from somewhere else. Okay, and so they start returning those unsold copies. And so if you're trying to maybe get this book quite late, you're gonna end up again really scrambling for this book by ordering the book online, which you can do. Of course, you can order it from an online vendor. You can actually buy it used for just maybe $10-15. I think new, the price has gone up. I think it's right now like $28 or $25. That's the only financial investment you're making in textbooks in this course, by the way. But just to make sure you're getting the book as quickly as possible to start working on this assignment to be ready to be submitted at the end of the term. It's only 5 weeks, by the way. I highly recommend getting this book within the first week of class. Again, that would be my best recommendation. Avoid delays and hassles, etc., and stress. Okay, altogether. Okay. Now, this class will be delivered in an asynchronous format. It's fully online. And asynchronous means that we're not going to be holding meetings online on designated days and times. So this is totally online, and the material is already posted on Blackboard. I will be explaining that, and your responsibility is to set some time aside day by day to review that material. Of course, you can do that in any way you want. You can tailor it according to your own schedule. Of course, that is very flexible, this format. But nonetheless, I highly recommend not postponing reviewing the required material that you need to overview, or that you need to review in this case, because you will simply just accumulate so much, and by the time you want to go back and catch up again, having just so much to review, you're going to end up with a huge again load. It will be just a huge burden of historical material that you're going to have to review, and that is going to be so difficult to do so. Of course, I mean, some students can do that, of course, in a day or two. They just kind of just take a crash course, in other words, and everything that they need to review to just catch up, of course. I mean, but it's not recommended. And instead, I suggest keeping a certain rhythm, a certain pace, that every day you set at least some time aside to review part of what is needed. Okay. All right. So that's as far as the format. Now, in terms of the course description, what we're going to cover, as you can see, almost in the beginning part of the syllabus, going into the second page of the Word document, you're going to find there two long paragraphs that kind of put together what we're going to cover. Of course, it's really impossible to provide a total summary and a synthesis of everything. So for simplicity's sake, again, what I've done is that in this section, I'm informing students of the major topics and themes that we're going to be covering across the course. This is the second part of U.S. history that kind of starts at the end of the Civil War and Reconstruction period that comes to a close in 1877. So again, we are only seeing U.S. history in the more contemporary era, starting around 1877 all the way to the present. Okay, so you can see there listed the way that we are going to organize this course and what we're going to pay attention to, what are going to be the major historical themes that we're going to be analyzing. For this purpose, I would like to just show you, if you continue scrolling down again, there will be down the line a table of contents, so to speak, of the historical periods, how we're going to actually organize this material. And the way I've decided to organize it is by dividing U.S. history since 1877 into 3 historical periods, and each historical period will contain 3 major topics or themes that are critical to understanding that period alone. Okay? So we start this course by looking first and foremost at the late 19th century, from 1877 to 1900. And this is a time when we see the birth of modern industrial America. I call it building modern America. Okay? And to understand the late 19th century, of course, it is very important to understand modernity. When modernity is really just nothing other than the coming of an industrial civilization, a high-tech industrial civilization. That is really what modernity means, a high-tech world in which industry is the way and the means by which we're building an economy that generates and produces everything that society needs. Everything is produced through industry. In other words, everything that we consume, everything that we require, everything that we need is produced by industries in this case. Okay. So we're going to cover 3 topics on that. We start the first topic of the course that deals with this historical period is titled The Idea of Progress in the Formation of Modern America. At the end of the Civil War and Reconstruction in the United States, American society, that is to say, was under the influence of certain ideas that were really what is called the spirit of the age, the spirit of the time. That was the idea that was moving things forward. The idea is that it was in people's minds, and it dominated not only their thinking, but also their behavior and action. So Americans were dominated during this time by the idea of progress, human progress. Okay? This is something we're going to get to see. In what way are we actually talking about here? Progress. Well, scientific and technological progress, the advent of modern science, a new science was on the rise, and modern technologies was also being invented that gave us this high-tech industrialized world that we live in today. And people began to place enormous faith in science and technology as ways that humans were going to solve most of the problems that had affected humanity for thousands and thousands of years, if not millions of years, of course, depending on our version, of course, of history. So there's a new faith, again, that we can achieve human progress if we use the methods of science, and then, of course, the new technologies, that we can actually create a heaven on earth. In other words, that was the kind of the faith of the time. There was also a faith in economic progress. This idea that we can actually achieve economic growth. We can grow our economies at the family level, at the community level, at the municipal, state, federal level, and that we can actually create an abundance of resources and transform those resources into finished goods that will provide people with everything they need in order to survive, but also to enjoy themselves, consumption, consumerism, and the like. People are pursuing money now, investment, jobs, opportunities for business, and so on. It's called capitalism, in other words. Okay? And at the same time, there was also another scientific idea that was introduced during this time that people associated with progress, and that was the idea of evolution. It was innovated by a scientist, Charles Darwin, and that, for many people, not all, kind of reassured this faith that progress was inbuilt in the very fabric of nature, that everything was moving into a higher and higher order, that we're evolving as a species. We're moving into a higher order in which people are going to grow more intelligent, more fit, stronger, and so on, in order to survive better in the environment. We're going to get to see all of that again. That kind of opens up the course, because this is going to be extremely necessary to understand the rest of the course. Otherwise, we're not going to understand American culture. If we don't understand those ideas that are so fundamental in the thinking of Americans even today. Okay? The idea of human progress, whether we're advancing technologically, scientifically, we're trying to evolve ourselves, improve our economies, and so on. The second topic is going to look at the changes that were introduced by the Industrial Revolution. We see the rapid industrialization of the United States. New industries were on the rise. Railroads, steel industries, oil in this case as well, telegraphs, telecommunications, telephones, electricity, chemistry, you name it, the cattle and beef industries and the like. A host of different industries were on the rise, mining and so on. So this rapid industrialization is not going to just transform the American economy, it's also going to transform American society, and we're going to be paying attention how American society was transformed with the rise of industry in different parts of the country, the North, the South, and the West. Okay, how that impacted the lives of millions of Americans and the way they lived, the way they created a new life experience inside of the large industrial cities that were born during this time, and so on. We're going to pay attention to all of those ideas. The third topic is called In Search of New Frontiers, from 1890 to 1900 and beyond. I mean, we're going to be moving, of course, into the 20th century in this topic, of course, because in the latter part of the 19th century and early part of the 20th, the United States was moving abroad. Okay, Americans were beginning to search for new opportunities outside of the United States. This is a time when the country was expanding its sphere of influence. Its economic influence was moving beyond the natural boundaries of the United States. Okay, Americans were moving into Latin America, places like Mexico, Central America. Some of them were investing in Africa, China, and so on. And so we're going to get to see this process, okay, this process by which Americans were moving outward and trying to engage in trade and commerce, investments, and so on. And it will be very, very useful for understanding, of course, the rest of the course, because this is going to set the pattern for the 20th century. Again, how the United States is really now trying to export its ideas about progress around the world. American ideas, American culture, American values, the ones that we explored in the first topic, are being now exported into the outside. And of course, we're going to see some of the responses by other societies outside of the United States to the American presence again overseas. Okay. Once we cover the first three topics, then we have the first exam. Okay, very important. So we cover three topics and then we have our first exam. And the exams, as I will explain in just a few moments, will cover the material exclusively that was presented in the lectures and nothing else. And so you don't need to be worrying about anything else other than the lectures. The lectures are already posted on Blackboard. They're already recorded. There is, of course, a folder. Let me just show you before I proceed with the rest of those topics. Under content here, you can see a folder. It says instructional materials. You click on it and you're going to see two folders. One is called recorded video lectures. And when you click on there, you're going to see 9 folders. And those 9 folders correspond to the 9 topics we're going to cover in the semester. Each folder has 3 videos. And the videos are my lectures that are being recorded with this same software that I'm using right now. So you're able to see the instructor. You're able to see the screen, and the screen you're going to be posting, of course, outlines. You'll be able to see the flow of ideas and concepts, including maps and so on, regarding that topic. So your responsibility is to go over the video lecture as if you were in class, paying attention to class, take notes, write down the analysis and the ideas and the details and the examples I'm providing of how history unfolds, and use that material for the exams. So there's nothing else you need other than just watch the lectures. Okay? All right, so again, each folder contains, as you can see, 3 video lectures that span for about an hour and 20 minutes each. Okay, so I'm giving you the virtual experience of a face-to-face class. I know some other instructors choose different modes of learning and teaching. That's fine. Okay. Mine is I want to give the student a virtual version of a face-to-face class. In that, I mean, you are still almost in a classroom, kind of, because you see the instructor actually presenting the information, explaining it, and so on and so forth. And again, those lectures are very, very similar to the ones I present in class. Okay. All right. So there are 9 folders because there are 9 topics, and this is exactly what we're concerned with here under course content. Let's go back to the syllabus. Then the second historical period, I call it the crisis of modernity, from 1890 to 1939. Now we're moving into the 20th century proper. And as the title of this era suggests, the United States was going through a crisis, but it was more a crisis generated, produced by the arrival of modernity, the arrival of this high-tech, industrialized civilization. That is modernity, really. And so, despite the hopes and the aspirations and the promises of this high-tech, industrialized world, this modern world that promised progress, there were a lot of negative, unintended consequences, okay, that modernity unleashed. Okay, not only in the United States, but to the countries that were trying to achieve an industrialized civilization, we see something similar occurring, and that is that with industrialization, something we're going to get to see again in the 4th topic is called popular reform movements. Many people were affected by it, particularly, for example, the industrial working class. People that were now suddenly working inside of industrial plants and factories and mines and so on. Long hours, 12, 14 hours a day with very meager wages and worsening conditions. Of course, this is not the kind of ideal, society that they anticipated with modernity. I mean, this is not really real progress for them, right? So we're going to see the industrial working class organizing into unions and so on in order to push for reforms. So this is leading to an era of increasing political activism, if you will, but some disaffected segments of society like the industrial working class and, of course, farmers. Farmers were also affected by the rise of railroads that were charging high fees on their grain to transport it, banks that were loaning money for them to buy machinery, and they were facing, of course, a lot of problems with paying back the loans because the market was really affected by other forces. They were not really in control of their own grain and the prices. Agricultural companies were on the rise. Big businesses that were more and more taking control of the agricultural market. So again, farmers were being displaced on a massive scale in the United States. And we see also the farmers organizing their own political movement, pushing for reform. And of course, the middle class also felt affected by the rise of monopolies in the United States. Single entities, single companies were taking over entire industries in the United States again. So we're going to see great activism. I know the age of reform, as it is called, during this time in which people were trying to reform the country to make it better, to address the problem of workers and farmers and also the middle class, something we're going to get to see in great detail. The fifth topic is World War I, and that's also part of the crisis of modernity, because this is a global conflict in which the industrialized powers of the world were at war with each other. They were trying to compete for resources around the world, trying to seize the materials, the needed natural resources to make their industries function. And they were also trying to compete for markets. And that led to a global conflict. So we're going to get to assess all of that in the fifth topic. And of course, the sixth topic is another crisis that the modern world brought about. And that is the Great Depression. That is the crash of the global capitalist system. It came crashing in 1929. Okay? That left millions of people unemployed, closing of businesses and banks across the United States. And we're going to see that, process unfold in the United States in the 1920s, particularly starting in 1929, moving into the 1930s. The whole decade of the 1930s was, again, economic downturns year after year. And we're going to see the attempts in the United States to address the problems of the Great Depression with legislation and reforms as well. Okay, the New Deal. Once we cover those three topics, then we have the second exam that is going to cover the material presented in those three topics, 4, 5, and 6. And then we move into the final section, the U.S. in the age of globalization from 1939 to the present. And we cover 3 more topics. World War II. Starting with World War II is really, again, a new global age begins in the 20th century, particularly around World War II. This is really a major, major global conflict in which most of the nations of the world, this is not just the industrialized nations, but even nations that were not industrialized are going to participate in this conflict. We're going to get to see that. Then the Cold War. The Cold War is also from 1945 to 1991. It is really a conflict that engulfed the world, in which 2 world superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, were trying to compete around the world for spreading their own system globally. The United States was trying to spread capitalism, and the Soviet Union was trying to spread communism around the world. Okay, we're going to get to see that process unfold as well. And then the 9th topic will cover the 1950s, 60s, and 70s and beyond, looking at civil rights in the United States, the attempt to create a more egalitarian society based on equality for all people under the law, and of course a countercultural revolution as well, meaning that there was also an attempt in the United States to bring about new cultural ideas that will challenge and perhaps even do away with certain traditional ideas in the United States. People were, in other words, kind of giving up on materialism, consumerism, and trying to institute more communitarian values, the values of living in a community, trying to incorporate maybe some spiritual or mystical practices. There's going to be a search for something more transcendent here at home by the youth. Again, this is, of course, going to lead to a kind of a cultural clash, a cultural war in the United States, a war of cultures, if you will. Something we're going to get to see, of course, in this segment. Now, once we cover the last 3 topics, then we have our final exam, and the final exam will only concern with the last 3 topics that we cover. Okay, so now we move to this segment, the exam section, and here I would like to spend some time talking about the exams, because a lot of students kind of wonder, what format is going to be and how to go about not only fulfilling the requirements, but trying to excel as well and trying to avoid some of the problems that other students have experienced, of course. Now, once again, there will be 3 exams, and they're going to be formatted exactly the same way. Okay, the identical format for the 3 of them. Now, the exams are not going to take place in a specific day and time, so they're not going to be a timed exercise. But this is more like a writing assignment in which students are given give and take around 10 days or so. Let us just say around, more or less, about 10 days for them to complete it. So it's really open notes, again, kind of exercise. The responsibility of the student is to review the material presented in the video lectures, take notes, and use that information to answer questions in the exam. And of course, the exam, the way it's organized, that it consists of 2 parts. Part 1, I present 2 topics. We cover 3, remember, per exam. So in the first part, you'll see 2 topics, and you choose 1. And you only answer the questions of that 1 topic. To be more precise, let us turn our attention to, let us just say, exam number 1. So you click here, this folder, course assignments. You click on it. You're going to find all of the assignments for this course, the exams and the report. Those are the required assignments. First, second, final exams and the report. They're all mandatory. The extra credit assignments are not mandatory. They're optional. Only if you want to add points to the exams, then you click on this folder at the very, very last under course assignments. It's extra credits, and you're going to find 3 folders. And each folder has the instructions. Sometimes the instructions come along with an article and so on. Sometimes there's just a video. I'm providing the link for you to watch it and so on. So your responsibility is to either read the article or watch the video and answer some questions on that. And if you do everything well on that assignment, you can add up to 10 points to each of the exams. Okay, in the extra credits. Again, you can do 1, you can do 2 or 3. It's up to you. There are no rules, in other words. If you do none, it's fine. No penalties will be incurred as well. Okay, so this is totally optional, the extra credits. But the first, second, final, and exams and the report, they're totally, again, required to pass this course. So if you click on first exam, if you open the document here, you'll see in the instructions, how to go about doing it. It tells you, the guidelines, the format, double spaced, page number, cover page, all of that, of course, all the essentials. But once you get into the actual instructions, part 1 says, okay, so you choose either to address topic 2 or topic number 3. So just choose 1 and answer all of the questions one by one as fully as possible for that 1 topic. So again, I've had some students in the past that when they're submitting the exam, they do the 2 topics, maybe because they just didn't either watch this video presentation or they did not follow the instructions. They did not really, read properly the instructions here listed in this document. But it's only 1. Again, just choose 1 topic and answer all of the questions for that 1 topic, one by one, in that order. No superstructure, no essay composition, no grand essay structure like topic, paragraph, and arguments and conclusion. Just, okay, you see the topic, look at each question, write the question and then the answer, write the question and then the answer one by one as fully as possible. Just for part one alone, the minimum requirement is 5 full pages double space. You can easily write that. I mean, you have 10 days to do it. So again, it's not like, well, this is undoable. I mean, it's not. You know, you have 10 days, or maybe 11, depending on which exam. I think the final exam you might have a little bit more, like 12 days, I believe, according to the due date listed on the syllabus. But otherwise, it's about 10 days to complete the first exam. Okay, so it's very doable. And then once you write those 5 full pages minimum, you can go overboard. Again, of course, that'll be even better. The more you write, the more you explain, the more you elaborate, the higher your grade. But for part one, you can only get 70 points, and then you move into part two. And in part two, everybody must watch the first topic, the idea of progress, because this is a very essential topic that, you know, I really require students to review. And this is critical information for understanding U.S. history and understanding world history, as a matter of fact. And so I've presented 3 key themes, and you're supposed to elaborate on 2. It's either the scientific and technological revolutions or the economic progress through capitalism or evolution. Just choose 3, and you're supposed to fully identify, describe, and explain. It's not just identification. This is not just, oh, you're just identifying where it is. You're supposed to really explain that theme. It's like a little theme, yet you must elaborate as fully as possible. Again, the scientific and technological revolutions, economic progress, again, or the idea of evolution. And that's for 30 points. I highly recommend that you spend some time addressing this section. Although it's only 30 points, it is critical to do it, because otherwise the highest you'll be able to go by just addressing part one will be a C. 70, maybe 75 points, 78 points, and that's about it. If you just decide not to really, spend some time working on this section. So I highly recommend that you spend an equal amount of time addressing both sections, part one and part two. Okay. Now there's another caveat here. Of course, I want to highlight and reiterate as many times as I can, because this is, again, some of the pitfalls that some students fall into. Some, not a lot, but I mean, I've had, of course, as a pattern, every semester, every class I teach, almost the same problem. And that is the instructions, as you read the instructions in bold letters, again, is that it is critical that the answers that you write for both part one and part two derive exclusively 100% from the lectures and nothing else. Nothing else. Meaning that all other kinds and types of outside sources, whether this is derived from books, articles, or documentaries, internet material, AI, doesn't matter, okay, in encyclopedias, or maybe prior knowledge of something you learned in a previous class, etc. All of that is not going to be allowed in the narrative. So if I start reading in your answers material I did not cover, your work will be disqualified. And I mean disqualified completely. So to avoid that hassle, I mean, just set aside any other kind of information and say, okay, so I really want to pass this class. It's a requirement. It's a survey that I must pass to continue advancing in my academic studies So why repeat this course in the future? I mean, just, try to just, in other words, abide by the requirements, follow the instructions, learn the material, and move on, in other words, okay? Some students just, for some reason, I don't know, it's just that they just don't want to do the work. I need to watch the lecture. Well, maybe I'm just going to go online and, and kind of answer those questions and just kind of expect that I'll pass. It's not going to happen. I read everything letter by letter, line by line, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, and I'm actually, assessing your participation in this course, your dedication, if you have dedicated time to watch the material, your discipline, of course, and of course your creativity, how you put everything together. Okay, so if I start reading that, you are gathering material from outside sources, again, what that is telling me that is that you have not spent time reviewing the material for this class. In other words, you're not really taking this course. Okay, you're not doing the work. So that cannot be rewarded or compensated, in other words, okay? The other issue that some students fall into, not a lot, but some of them do, is that, okay, they decide that, okay, so only the lectures are allowed. So what they do is that they decide to submit a transcription of my lectures, whether they do the transcriptions manually or through some app, software, etc. Doesn't matter, again, but that's not really doing the work. I'm not expecting to read my own lectures on paper. Okay, you're supposed to watch the material and then use your creativity, your writing skills, your analytical skills, and be able to write a narrative. Okay, that's part of the intellectual development that we're going through. In academia, we're developing our intellects. We're learning how to use this tool, in our minds. In other words, be able to learn information, assess it critically, and be able to put it into words. Okay, so when I read transcriptions, I can easily spot when that is a transcription. Okay, I'm just listening to myself here. Okay, that's not gonna work either. Even if they're trying to kind of accommodate or change some things here and there, I can see that this is not the original work. Okay, this is not an original work. It has to be original, in other words. Okay, so I stress this issue in the class introductions because this is something that keeps popping up every semester, and I must warn students of this because otherwise this is going to be a surprise that whenever you submit a work that was either not done by yourself or it was something that was not concerning this class because you decide to explore other outside sources, etc., instead of watching the videos, again, they end up with an F in this course. So to avoid that, just try to, follow the instructions, okay, in this case. All right, so let us go back to the syllabus. I mean, each exam is pretty much formatted in an identical manner. There's part 1 and part 2, and this is how we're moving along, test by test. Okay, so all you need is watch the lectures. That's all you need. There's no more, outside sources or required readings that you need to be reading along or you need to be nothing. Again, just the lectures. Okay. All right. So I mentioned the extra credits. There are 3 extra credits on Blackboard. I already showed you the folder under course assignments. They're optional. You can add up to 10 points to each exam. So it's a good way of actually improving in this course again. And there will be no penalties for not submitting them. Okay, just to clear that out. Now, the syllabus also must inform students of something so technical here, and that is that the last day to drop this course without affecting your grades or your GPA or financial aid and so on is August the 4th. After this due date, if you fail for some reason to drop from this course, you're going to receive whatever grade you earn, okay, whatever it is. Even if you did not submit anything, you decide, well, I'm going to be dropped because I was never there. I never submitted everything, but this is something that you must do in order to avoid getting, of course, a low grade or an F at the end of the course. Okay, it's August the 4th. Of course, if you're falling behind for some reason and you think you can catch up and you can actually not only stay in the course but pass it, please talk to me before deciding to drop the course, and we can make perhaps a minor arrangement, maybe an extension of an assignment or an exam, etc. That's fine. But if it's totally out of your control and if there's an emergency happening, of course, in your life that prevents you from actually continuing in the course, that's totally understandable as well. Okay. Now, I mentioned there is going to be at the end of the semester a report or an assignment that is going to be due. Okay. I call it the study questions report. This is the only course assignment that will be required, and it will comprise 25% of your final grade. Okay, this is where the textbook comes into play. Okay, make sure you're getting the 4th edition. Okay, because earlier editions do not contain the same documents, only the 4th edition. Okay, so you're getting this textbook, and then I've selected 10 documents for you to read, and you're supposed to read the document and answer some questions on the document. It tells you the instructions, the chapter number, the page number, the title, and also the questions. How to go about doing this? Well, when you start the document, write the title of the document on top. The document, the title should be written at the very top of the page, and then follow a question and answer format. Each question stated before the answer, one by one. Ideally, the questions that are presented per document should be answered in about one full page, double space. So each document presents 2 or 3 questions, and to answer them, you're required to fill one full page. And then when you move into the second document, you proceed at the top of the page, write in the title, and then question and answer one by one in this way. Okay, so at the end of the day, you'll end up with about 10 full pages, double spaced, with a cover page. The cover page doesn't count as the body of the work, of course. Everything saved in a single Word doc or PDF, uploaded on August the 4th. Okay? And that comprises 25% of your final grade. Okay? Grading consists of 4 major factors: the 3 exams and the report, 25% each. Now, of course, the extra credit assignments also can add more and more value to the exams. That's another factor. Okay? And at the end of the term, I also factor in effort and progress. In other words, what is effort and progress? Well, are you progressing from the first to the second to the final exam in grades? Are your grades moving up or down? Okay? So if you're moving up from the first, second to final, I see that as progress and effort. You're really making an effort, really, in this course to improve yourself, to be better, at answering questions, etc. You're really, again, proving that you're determined, again, to get a higher grade, and that has to be rewarded. If you submitted an extra credit assignment or two, that is also a sign of effort, right? And that has to be also compensated. So if you're borderline, let's say you, at the end of the term, you ended up with an 88.75 grade average, I will push you into the A range if you show signs of progress and effort. Improvement, you're improving your grades, you're submitting assignments, extra credits, so on. And so you just need a final push. I will give you the final push because that is also something that comes into play yet when assessing learning and growth, in the class. Okay, so your grades are not set in stone. It is very possible to improve and get better along the way. Okay. At the end, it shows you the tentative course schedule and assignments, what we're covering, where we're supposed to be covering day to day, for instance. And then when we have the first exam, which is July 16th, you submit it on Blackboard. And then the second exam is July 28th. You submit the second exam on Blackboard. And then at the end, it tells you when the study questions report is due, August the 4th, and then the final, August the 7th. Okay? All is listed in the syllabus. You might be wondering, so where are we supposed to be submitting the work? Once it's ready, it's important to save your work either on Word doc or PDF, because Blackboard opens those applications immediately without any problems. So at the very bottom, again, of content in Blackboard Ultra, there's a folder titled Submit Work. You click on it and you see all of the links that will take you to the Upload tab for the first, second, final exams, study question report, and the extra credit assignments. This is where you submit everything, in other words, okay, by the due date. All right, so it is very, very easy to navigate because everything is under course content, the very first option of the toolbar at the top. Of course, the announcement section will be also used every time I send an announcement. When am I going to send an announcement? Whenever we're approaching the deadline of an exam. 2 or 3 days before, you'll receive an announcement through Blackboard saying, oh, the first exam is due coming next July 16th, etc. For July 28th, second exam, the same way. Days before, you'll receive an announcement, and so on. Okay, so it is very easy to navigate because everything is located here under course content, the syllabus, the instructional materials that has the recorded video lectures, the course assignments, and the submit work. So, if you have any questions, comments, concerns regarding this class, anything regarding the exams, the assignments, please let me know. I will be checking my email on a daily basis and will be responding to emails constantly, of course. This is all I have for you regarding this syllabus, this class introduction. I hope it was very useful for you to be able to identify the major sections of Blackboard Ultra and what are the expectations for this course. Remember, it's all lecture-based. All you need to worry is about just the lectures. And if you really pay attention, again, to the exams, although we cover 3 topics per exam, in reality, the exam only covered 2 topics. I'm just letting you know, right? Because, the exam leaves 1 topic out. Part 1 says choose 1 topic from a set of 2. So you're actually choosing which topic to review, right? Just letting you know, it's almost like a tip. And in advance, I'm just, if you do the math, in reality, you're just reviewing 2 topics per exam. Those are 6 lectures. Just try to set some time aside for those 10 days or 11 days that you have between exams to watch those 6 lectures as fully as possible and use that information to answer the questions of part 1 and part 2, and you'll be in good shape. You'll be able not only to pass this course but excel. Again, it is only when students go astray and they decide to not watch the lectures and instead use other sources, that's when things go in the wrong way. Okay? Other than that, again, it is very, very easy to navigate, very easy to understand. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll be responding to your questions immediately. Okay? Once again, my name is Alfonso R. Lopez. I'll be your instructor for this history class this summer term, and I'll see you in the first day of class. I'll be sending that announcement regarding this video. Thank you.